Hey, what's up guys, it's SirTagCR, and today we're back at it again with the ultimate guide on how to play Hog Rider, Executioner, Nado perfectly. And if you guys enjoy these really heavily edited guide videos, make sure to let me know by saucing out a fat thumbs up on the video. These videos take a lot of time to make, but I'll be spending the time to make more of them in the future if you guys do enjoy it. With the help of Ian, one of the best Hog Rider cycle players in the entire world, we're going to be uncovering the secrets of how to play Hog Rider Executioner. Ian consistently finishes in the top 100 every single season with multiple Hog Rider cycle decks. Ever since the removal of draws and the implementation of lowest tower damage, Hog Rider Xe Nado has been one of the best decks in Clash Royale. If you can't break through and win with your Hog Rider, you can always defend and rocket your opponent out to win by lowest tower damage. With the Executioner, Tornado, Log, Ice Spirit, and Valkyrie, you can defend against anything in the final seconds while cycling 2 rockets to put yourself in the lead. It's literally impossible to stop the rocket direct damage, and you'll just win the game because you have more hit points left on your tower, and lowest tower damage always wins. Beware though, if you rocket cycle out your opponent, it's almost guaranteed to make them rage. So now that we've covered an overview of the deck and why it's so strong at the highest level, let's break down the best starting plays with Hog Rider Executioner. The best play at the start of the game is cycling in a Hog Rider, because if your opponent doesn't have an answer to it, a lot of times you can get some free early chip damage. The next best plays are cycling either Ice Spirit or Log. It's impossible to get punished for cycling a 1 elixir cost card like Ice Spirit, and cycling Log with this deck gives you 84 chip damage, and it's really safe with this deck because you have Tornado and Goblins against any Goblin barrel. Lastly, you can cycle Goblins at the river off to the side, and it'll give you 1 extra hit, then dropping them directly down the middle. One of the best things about this deck is there's always something to cycle, and you never have to wait until double elixir, which is incredibly boring for a lot of people. I personally hate playing beatdown decks and having to wait until double elixir before it's safe to cycle a single thing. Now that we've covered the best starting plays with Hog Xe Nado, let's break down all of the matchups. First up, we're going to cover how to destroy Giant Graveyard. The #1 goal is to activate King Tower early on at almost any cost. The best way to accomplish this is go in for a Hog Rider, and if your opponent decides to counter with Mini P.E.K.K.A., which most of the time they do, you go in for a King Tower activation off of the Mini P.E.K.K.A. If you have Ice Spirit in hand, you can activate King Tower without taking any damage, but if you don't, it's okay to take 1 Mini P.E.K.K.A. hit because activating King Tower is always worth it. Once the King Tower is activated and chipping away on the Graveyard Skeletons, Giant Graveyard defenses are super easy. And if they drop a Musketeer or any support cards behind their Giant as it's about to cross the river, you Tornado it all into alignment. The Executioner will give you a juicy positive elixir trade, and then your Princess Tower will retarget off of the Giant because the Giant was tanking for the Graveyard onto the Graveyard Skeletons. Since you'll have the King Tower activated chipping away on the Skeletons with the Princess Tower, your opponent will be a sad panda. One last pro tip in this matchup is if your opponent decides to go for a Giant Graveyard at the river, drop your Goblins right on top of the Giant. They'll help you destroy the Giant super quickly, and if your opponent decides to drop arrows on top of them, they'll not be able to hit the tower, and it will be a -1 trade. And because of the super fast cycle of the deck, if you cycle Goblins as the first play defending against the Giant Graveyard and double elixir, you'll always get back to them to defend against the remaining Graveyard Skeletons. So you'll get a positive elixir trade with your first Goblins, and then you'll get back to them to defend against the Graveyard Skeletons. They will not have a spell to counter it. The majority of your damage in this matchup is hogging at the exact same time they go in for the Giant Graveyard. Because Giant Graveyard at the river costs 10 elixir, there is no way they'll be able to stop all Hog Rider hits. If you have King Tower already activated, or you can guarantee the defense because you're up elixir, this is the best time to go in. Otherwise, if you wait to counter push and they have 4 elixir for a Mini P.E.K.K.A., it's very hard to get a lot of Hog Rider hits. This is why you need to activate King Tower early on so you can play really aggressive. This matchup is incredibly difficult to play if you don't have a game plan. But once you start activating King Towers early on with Mini P.E.K.K.A. and incorporating the rest of these pro tips and tricks, you'll be winning against Giant Graveyard players in no time. Against Golem decks, just cycle passively with your Goblins, Ice Spirit, and Log until they drop their Golem. When they finally drop their Golem, or if they drop their Golem first play, just drop your Valkyrie in the back in the same lane. Then follow up with a Hog Rider in the opposite lane. You'll be able to Executioner and Tornado all of their supporting troops together and destroy it with your splash damage. They typically will not lightning in single elixir, otherwise they wouldn't be able to support their Golem. Because Executioner doesn't die to lightning, you're going to be fine in any defense. If they somehow in single elixir decide to go in for a lightning, arrows plus Golem on top of your Executioner and not support their Golem at all you have to do is draw the Golem to the King Tower with the Tornado. And because you Hog Rider opposite lane, they won't be able to Tornado your Executioner right into them. Spoiler alert, they will not be happy. And if you have a feeling that they're going to ignore your Hog Rider and just try to Tornado your Executioner, make sure you drop your Executioner almost touching your tower very low. In double elixir, you want to be cycling your Executioner early on in the same lane as your opponent's Golem. So if they decide to go for lightning plus arrows on top of of your Executioner, you cycle back to another one and it's easy defense. In double Elixir, you can play a little bit more aggressive with your Hog Riders in the opposite lane and throw in Goblins, or sometimes even a Valkyrie. The biggest takeaways of this matchup is the Hog Rider in the opposite lane. As soon as you see the Golem, make sure you protect your Executioners in single Elixir and cycle back to 2 of them in double Elixir. If you play against Golem correctly with Hog Rider Executioner, you will make so many Golem players rage quit. So if you're sick and tired of losing to players that drop their Golem in the back first play, pick up this deck right now. The next matchup that we're going to break down is against 2.6 Hog Rider. Your mission in this matchup is just to survive single Elixir while activating King Tower. It's hard to get Hog Riders through Tornado plus Valkyrie and through a cannon, so it's generally going to be a chip damage war between you guys. That means if your opponent's going in for a Hog Rider, try to use an Ice Spirit or a Log to make sure that when you activate King Tower, they don't get a single hit on your tower. Whenever you have a Valkyrie surviving from defense, go in for a Hog Rider behind it and log your opponent's cannon. A lot of times they'll be surprised by this and you'll get Hog Rider damage on your opponent's tower. If you know that your opponent's running 2.6 Hog Rider and you're lucky enough to see a Musketeer near the tower, rocket it. In double Elixir, if there's nothing on the field and you're up or even Elixir from your opponent, you can just rocket their standalone tower. No matter what they do, even if they make multiple predictions, you can defend against it with the Valkyrie plus Tornado. After you get some nice sneaky Hog Rider chip damage from your Valkyrie Log and Hog Rider push and then rocket cycle out your opponent, all you have to do is defend with the Valkyrie plus Tornado. Even if they're a really good player and they make predictions on your Goblins with their Log and Fireball your Executioner plus Valkyrie, it still doesn't matter. You're gonna rocket cycle them out and they're gonna be a sad panda. First, minor wall breakers, you generally want to go same lane as long as they don't have rocket. In single Elixir, you want to cycle Hog Riders, Ice Spirits, Goblins, or Logs just to get chip damage on your opponent's tower. Also, if you're throwing Hog Riders at them and they're dropping bomb towers on defense, it's going to be 4 for 4, and if they mess up, then you're going to get a lot of damage. So worst case scenario, it's an even trade. Best case scenario, they don't have enough Elixir for the bomb tower or they mess up and you get damage. It's a win-win either way, and if you're applying aggression and making trades, it gets you closer to double Elixir where you have a huge matchup advantage. The most important thing is to make sure they never get a Magic Archer to connect to your Valkyrie. If they do, you want to immediately tornado it to the side so it messes up its alignment and stops its tower damage. As long as you're around even Elixir, feel free to rocket their Valkyries or Magic Archer in single Elixir. It will give you a very valuable damage lead, and you need that in this chip damage war. To defend their minor wall breakers pushes, you Goblins on top of their minor and log the wall breakers and the minor at the same time. And if your opponent goes in for Valkyrie plus wall breakers pushes, make sure you go for an Executioner instead of a Valkyrie to counter it. The Executioner allows you to be way more safe against any Magic Archer connection. In double Elixir, you can rocket just the tower and absolutely nothing else and still defend. Keep in mind, this is something that you can only do if you have control of the arena. If they have control and they have Magic Archers cycled like in the middle, you can't rocket it. You have to cycle an Executioner in the back and play passive. Overall, this is a pretty good matchup for you. As long as you catch their miners with either an Ice Spirit plus Goblins or Ice Spirit plus Valkyrie, and you don't let any Magic Archers connect to your tower, you're going to be able to outdamage them with a rocket and they'll never be able to catch up. First, Balloon Miner cycle, it is imperative that you activate King Tower as soon as possible with either a miner or a balloon. The best defensive sequence is catching their miners with Goblins and rocketing the balloon. Sometimes you'll want to play super aggressive with a Valkyrie plus Hog Rider, and if your opponent goes in for a balloon in the opposite lane, you can go in for an easy King Tower activation with Tornado plus Ice Spirit. And if both players play correctly, much like the Expo matchup, it's very hard for either player to break through. In double and triple Elixir, as the game goes on, the Executioner's value increases exponentially. When they've committed to a tower and they have to take it out in the last couple seconds, it's very easy for you to defend multiple balloons with a single Executioner. However, you're the one with rockets, so you're going to end up winning if you're just going to rocket your opponent's tower in the last couple seconds. Just make sure you're catching your opponent's miners with the Ice Spirit so then you can redirect it onto Goblins so they never get damaged. You'll win by lowest tower damage, and that's why this deck is just unbelievably strong. First, Lava Hound decks. As soon as you see a Lava Hound dropped in the back, you rush opposite lane with your Hog Rider. And if they respond to your Hog Rider with Mega Minion, Minions, or Guards, and it counter pushes towards your tower, you completely ignore it and you focus on the Lava Hound. When you focus on defending the Lava Hound, it's super simple. Just drop your Executioner in the back, and if they follow up with either a Inferno Dragon, Baby Dragon, or Balloon, just rocket it. And if they go for bait cards behind their Lava Hound, you can just line everything up with your Tornado. One pro tip in this matchup is if you do not have the correct hand and you don't have Hog Rider and they Lava Hound in the back, you still need to punish them. So what you do is you go in for a Valkyrie at the river in the opposite lane, and you can even add goblins. And that will produce the same effect as the Hog Rider. They cannot ignore that. Because they can't concentrate all of their elixir in the same lane as the Executioner, it will be a very easy defense for you. When you're defending against Lava Hounds and double elixir, you're able to stack multiple Executioners, throw a Hog Rider in front of it, and make it an unstoppable counter push. Executioner's best matchup is Lava Hound if you play it correctly, so hopefully you guys get a lot of those. When you play against giant double prints, much like 2.6 Hog Rider, your goal is to survive single elixir. It's okay to use your tower as a resource because it's not easy to make a perfect defense against them. Try to save a little bit of elixir by letting them get a little bit of chip damage early on, otherwise if you try to defend everything, they're going to make a huge push that you can't defend. A good thing to do is if they go in for a Prince or a Dark Prince, just go Ice Spirit plus Tornado to activate King Tower and deny all damage. When they drop their Giant in the back, initially drop your Valkyrie, then follow up with an Executioner in the exact same lane. One key tip that a lot of people do incorrectly in this matchup, including myself, is going Hog Rider opposite lane as soon as you see a Giant and single elixir in the back. You can only apply aggression with a Hog Rider opposite lane when you see a Giant in the back and double elixir. Otherwise, you're just not going to have elixir to defend everything and you're just going to lose your tower. Big thing to keep in mind in single elixir is play really defensive and don't overcommit. It's important to know in this matchup, single elixir is terrible, so you have to play safe. Against Expo, your best defense is going to be rocketing and then tanking with either Ice Spirit or Goblins. You can also go for a Valkyrie plus Executioner on top of your opponent's Expo if you know that your opponent doesn't have any defenses for it. If that Executioner is able to connect, he does a lot of damage. If you don't have Rocket and Cycle and you want to play really safe, you can go for a Valkyrie and Hog Rider to eliminate the Expo. It does, however, cost more elixir than the Goblins plus Rocket or the Ice Spirit plus Rocket, so it's usually not your first choice. If you get Ice Spirits and Logs to chip away at your opponent's tower, you will be in the damage lead. But the big advantage that you have in this matchup is when your opponent goes in for offensive Expos in the last 30 seconds, there's no way they can ever get that to connect. So what you should do in the last 30 seconds is tank those Expos with Valkyries, Goblins, Ice Spirits, whatever you can, while you cycle 2 Rockets at the same time, and there's no way they can break through because it's only 30 seconds left and you secure the win through lowest tower damage. Admittedly, that's not the most fun way to play, but that's the only way to beat Expo at the highest level consistently. So to quickly recap, play passively throughout the match, make sure they don't get any Expos to connect to your tower, make sure you cycle 2 Rockets in the last 30 seconds and tank for any Expos. If no Expo connects and you cycle those Rockets, there's no way they're going to be able to catch up to you in lowest tower damage and you'll win. And that's actually where we're going to end today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to let me know by saucing out a fat thumbs up on the video. And a huge shout out to everyone that's using creator code SirTag. Because of you guys, I'm able to dedicate more time to videos and I really appreciate it. And be sure to follow Ian on Twitter. His link will be down below in the description of the video. If you're not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chilling with me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and I'll see you guys in the next video.